Hi, I'd like to introduce you to Beth Horseman, sound artist, musician. Anything else you want to describe yourself?
Audiovisual composer.
Audiovisual composer, definitely. So this is Beth, I'm Kevin, and today we're here to discuss Beth's installation, Rooted in Green Channels, which she created for the Dear Green Bothy, which ran in November as part of Sound Thought. So quite a few different things there, which we'll get into. So the Dear Green Bothy was a program of arts and cultural events that ran from summer all the way through to December, based here at the University of Glasgow, programs by the College of Arts. So we invited different artists, practitioners to create works in response to COP26 and the ongoing climate crisis, one of which was Beth's work. So before we maybe get into discussing your work, you're kind of commissioned on behalf of Sound Thought. So maybe, Beth, you want to introduce Sound Thought for us?
Ooh, good, good launch into it. So I've been on the committee with Sound Thought for a couple of years now. Sound Thought is a group that came out of the sort of postgraduate area of the University of Glasgow, more specifically the music department. And we put on various events, sort of concerts. We did some other sort of streams of things over lockdown, but these are all to do with various aspects of experimental composition and music, be that electronic, classical, audiovisual. We cover quite a wide range of interests. Do you think that about covers it?
That pretty much sums it up. I think that's a good good description. So as Beth said, we're kind of postgraduates, recent graduates from the University of Glasgow and now other institutions around Glasgow as well. And we wanted to get involved with the Dear Green Bothy and create some works that kind of dealt with the notion of the climate crisis and the ongoing climate emergency. So as part of this, one project that we did was to create a series of sound walks. So each of us on the committee created different soundscape compositions that were designed to kind of be listened to in situ around the West End, and these kind of linked in with the sound of the environment, notions of acoustic ecology, white noise, and humankind's impact on the sonic landscape around us. So that was one project, and you can actually watch us and listen to us talk about that in a different interview. Link below. But yeah, today we're here to talk about Beth's installation. So Beth was kind of commissioned to create a specific piece, an installation to be installed during COP26. So maybe do you want to tell us about what your installation was and what the process was in kind of creating it?
Yeah, sure. So I think the reason I was kind of approached to make this installation in the first place was that as part of my master's, one of my projects was this piece that I called Rooted, where I had basically taken a bonsai tree I'd been looking after and used various sensors with the bonsai tree to feed into a max patch on my laptop and create this generative sound piece. So when we were sort of thinking about what we could do that would really link into COP and sort of feel quite suitable for that time and place in Glasgow, Kevin sort of reached out to me and was like, "Oh, I remember your tree piece, could we do something like that as part of the Dear Green Bothy?" And I was quite excited because I'd really enjoyed making it, and it was a piece that I really wanted to expand in various ways. I think there's a lot of different routes, no pun intended, that could be taken with it. So for this piece, I wanted to expand it a little bit, but also refine it. So I ended up using 3 plants instead of the original 1, but then reducing the amount of sensors. So it kind of linked into an idea I've had for a while, where I'm expanding the number of objects or items being sonified, but reducing the impact they will individually have on the piece. So it's this idea of like collective effect. So it was a lot less complicated maybe than my first piece in terms of all the sensors being used, but then what was more interesting to come out of it was the idea of interactivity. with it being a piece that was going to be installed at the university for a while, I wanted people who came to see it to be able to kind of touch it and influence it in a way that maybe hadn't been possible during lockdown when I made the first piece. I feel like I'm waffling already, sorry.
No, it's really good to get an insight into the work, and I think what you just mentioned there, it was nice to have a work that was, you know, tactile and people could touch, because the works we made previously, the sound walk, were designed with COVID in mind as well, so people could do it in their own time and outside, but it was nice to have a piece a bit later on in the year where people could come in and touch, although of course we had the hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
Maybe do you want to describe the actual, you know, setup of the piece? I mean, there's photos and lots of documentation people can check out, but maybe just for the purposes.
No, yeah, so the sort of visual element of the piece is very much the plants. The setup that we ended up doing for Rooted in Green Channels was 3 plants, each with a sensor that was linking back to an Arduino. That Arduino was feeding back into a Mac that we had on these tables, displaying the patch, and that was the thing creating sound, which was then fed back out to some speakers. So essentially you had the plants as the visual main point, and then the sounds that the plants were affecting, along with these roots which you could touch to interact with the piece and generate a new sound. The piece itself, the sound elements, were all kind of made from different kinds of subtractive and additive synthesis. So there were a lot of incidences? I don't know, maybe not the word. I basically recorded myself looking after the plants, so there were a lot of sort of field recordings taken of me interacting with them just in my home, and then I picked out frequencies from these to be part of the main body of the piece, and then also added lots of individual frequencies to kind of bulk it out. But I guess this all came from these ideas of growth and cutting back that you see a lot in sort of human-plant interactions, and this idea of parallel shape and form between technology and nature, if that makes sense.
I think definitely your installation definitely captured that idea of, you know, interaction and you know, technology and nature. But I really like the idea of how the sounds that you used in the installation were, you know, some of them were field recordings of you caring for the plants, so it's like this added element, this added layer of like the story of you previously caring for the plants, and then, you know, the audience members could come and you know, interact and tap into that through touch.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like the first piece was made during lockdown, so I really wanted to make something that felt like a sort of sonification of a safe space. I kind of got very into plant care when I was inside a lot, and I wanted to somehow bring the feeling. I mean, I know you have a lot of plants. You know, there's a sort of mindfulness that comes with like watering your plants every day and checking on them, and I wanted to, in some sense, try and sonify that, and expand like the presence of a plant when you couldn't go out to gardens and parks as much. So the whole piece itself was meant to be quite an ambient, soothing experience, which was nice because I think it was fed back when we had it installed at the Huntarium, that a lot of people did feel that they were getting that from the piece. Yeah,
I definitely got that as well, and like it was installed in quite a large kind of stairwell, and it was a nice location, but I think the sounds and the way it was, you know, staged and set up, it did feel like, you know, you were in someone's home, and like you really got that sense of, you know, kind of the safe space and caring with the plants, and that kind of intimate in a way. Even like the lighting and how the plants are set up, it was quite like you know, very inviting. And I think obviously the sonic elements really kind of played into that, you know, more kind of ambient sounds and relaxing. And I think one of my favorite things was maybe approaching from outside the area, because the sound kind of leaked out into other areas like the cloisters, and you could kind of hear this like warming, and you could hear the bass and like these quite like really nice sounds coming forth.
It was quite interesting as well, that kind of linked back to the sound walk we did, because the location that I had was the cloisters. So then when we were doing those LED sound walks earlier on in the year, you know, it was very different to when the installation was on, and you could hear different frequencies sort of bleeding through your headphones as you listened to the piece in the cloisters. So that was quite cool, the way that the two pieces combined as well.
That's quite special as well, because as Beth said, she created her sound walk in the cloisters, and we did do some. I think we definitely did some tours while the installation was there as well. So people were really lucky and they got to kind of experience the soundscape composition, and then kind of interact with the installation as well, or vice versa. So I think that was a really nice link as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as well, like from knowing your works, like you could tell it was like a Beth piece, or like it had that kind of sound, which is interesting. So I wanted to ask, like, do you think about like do you like consciously want a sound, or is it just something that maybe you come back to? Or
I think there's a lot of themes and ideas that I find myself coming back to. I mean, the original inspiration for Rooted was Christina Kubish, her installation, Conference of Trees, where she'd kind of created headphone pieces and wrapped wires around bonsais, and people could listen to those. So it was a very different piece, but the imagery was kind of what started me wanting to really have a plant be the focal point of an audiovisual piece. And I do find a lot of the themes I end up coming back to are these sort of natural themes. So people like Christina Kubish and Anna Lockwood have been massive inspirations, because they do a lot of work where they're, again, drawing these parallels and paying attention to sound environments. So I think every time I try and do something electronic without incorporating field recordings, I just find myself wanting to whack one in. It's like if I try and do something different, I find that it ends up being in some way similar to what I've already created. So I wouldn't say it's intentional, but I wonder if it's the fact that I quite often approach pieces in the same way, where I will find a field recording that I want to use and work around that sometimes, rather than going out and finding a specific field recording I want. So maybe there's like elements of aleatoricism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. And definitely visually, the link between the natural and the technology, the way that you had the kind of roots as the sensors coming out, so the way it was like designed, the kind of spilling out of the pot and onto the table. They were like the plant roots, but they were made out of the touch sensitive metal that kind of triggered everything. So the idea of like combining the technology with the natural, idea of the roots, it kind of reflects that piece that you mentioned, and in your own way.
Well, no, exactly. It's kind of I've been watching Green Planet recently.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's this kind of idea. It's this idea of networks and communication, and it's kind of fascinating when you start to, if you're working with Max and you're like making patches, there's this very instantly recognizable sort of imagery when you're connecting things, and there's branches and there's links, and then you find out that trees and mushrooms and all these like living bodies have a very similar setup that we as humans have kind of replicated and created for computers and other forms of technology. Obviously it's like a really simple concept, and I feel like I'm maybe like overthinking it, but there's something really satisfying to me about this idea of things connecting and influencing each other in like very small ways. So the difference you make, like the plant readings that were being sent to the sensor didn't have to be massively different to create a change in the texture of the whole composition.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel like I could waffle about.
I think I want to hear as well, because also the you had water, and that was part of the the performance and installation itself. Like you would occasionally not overwater, but you would occasionally water the plants, and obviously that would affect the sensors, and that would change things as well, which I think was really interesting. And again, it's linking to the the plant care more widely.
Yeah, so there are a lot of like elements of ritual, like watering, like the original piece, because it was a bonsai tree, I was sort of cutting branches off and things, which Rooted in Green Channels was these sort of more lush plants that you'd find maybe in like a jungle environment, which was kind of meant to link in a bit more to COP and everything, with these like environments that are being threatened slightly more maybe than a potted plant. But it was, the water was this idea of like intervention and interaction where you could make quite a big change to the piece. So in a version I recorded earlier, points where I'm watering it kind of felt very performative, and it was something I wanted to maybe do at some point was a performance with the installation where I'd interact with it and people could come and watch the plant care. Obviously, it's quite hard to work out when a plant will specifically need watering. And as a plant person, you'll know there's a great fear of overwatering. So it's quite an interesting idea, being able to interact with the installation, but not being able to do it too much, or I'd kill the installation.
I mean, that's really cool. That's like a completely other layer. It's like you can interact with it, but at the same time, the limits are imposed on you by the nature of the plants themselves, and through, how they live and breathe, which is really cool. So I think on that point, maybe, we've talked previously about future work, or maybe how you would expand this piece or grow it as such. So do you want to talk about that a bit?
So there's a lot of different ways I think it would be really interesting to expand this piece. There's one, a couple of years ago now, Cryptic in Glasgow had an installation with the artist Asuna called 100 Keyboards, and that was really, really cool. He basically had loads and loads of these toy keyboards with the same note held down, and this kind of way that lots of instances of the same sound but on different levels of battery and things playing in the same room combined created a really magical soundscape. And I'd love to do something similar in some sort of greenhouse or conservatory, where someone had lots of plants, where I could hook up loads and loads of individual sensors to create some kind of scale-based work. The other thing that would be cool is just holding it somewhere that really kind of linked into the piece, so like the botanics or any kind of garden space that wanted it would be amazing, because I think it's that kind of idea of creating a soundscape that matches a green environment in a way. Also, in an ideal world, I'd have the technological skills to make like a waterproof installation and sonify a whole tree, but that's maybe a little while away for now. But
that's further down the line. I can. That'll be really cool. I can totally see you like doing that, but also the performance aspect. I can see that you like. I can see us like in the concert hall and just like bring all the plants in, and then like different people like watering it, and like that kind of ritual or like performance aspect would be quite interesting.
That's what I'd love. I kind of did originally during lockdown. I really was quite keen to work out a way to do a live stream of it. I don't know if you watched Spring Watch ever growing up.
Is that like the garden?
Yeah. It's like the nature program where they'll kind of like look at everything and waking up as you hit spring. Yeah. And they would have these live streams in like birds' nests where you could see baby birds growing up, and you could go in, like they were 24-hour. And I love the idea of having like a 24-hour live stream of the plant and the sounds. But
that'd be cool. Definitely, we could do that with like the prayer plants that move up and down, and then that's visually interesting too.
Well, this was the thing. I think it's quite difficult to find a spot that you can live stream. For instance, I was on a ground floor flat when I wanted to do it, and I think the window view was not very inspiring. But obviously, if you had like some kind of incredible bothy somewhere with an internet connection, you'd be laughing. But essentially, I guess the point is there's loads of different directions I can take this. The main exciting point for me is taking like real world readings of things like soil moisture, light, temperature, and converting those into a different sound element or aspect. I think it's quite cool getting to know the piece, like being with it over periods of time. I could kind of tell which plants needed watering based off of how it
just
sounded.
off the sounds,
obviously because I knew how I'd made it. But it was
that's really interesting. That's really kind of taking the idea of plant care and really kind of recontextualizing it, and you're not doing it through like, I guess, feel or visually, but learning how to take care of them sonically. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of
I need that in my room. It'll be like
might get a bit stressful after a while. I'll just do one where it'll be like, help me. I don't know, but it's quite a nice idea, especially maybe for places where constant soundscape would be useful for people checking in on plants. I don't know, there's a lot of different routes to take it.
Definitely projects to consider in the future.
Yes.
But I think that's been really insightful into your work, and how it's related to natural elements, and specifically with the Dear Green Bothy and COP26. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to talk about the work, or any wider concerns?
I don't know really. I think it was just very interesting for me, having made the work during a period of isolation, to then have the second commission work be like in a public space and have people be able to interact with it. When the first version, it had just been me.
Yeah.
It was really, really exciting, and it's very cool seeing how much a piece changes when you take it from like a private into a public space. So that's something that it was really exciting. It was really nice being able to interact with different people and kind of see different reactions to it. Because obviously as an artist you never quite know what people will make of something until you show it to them. So
we were lucky that there was, I think, we had a good audience numbers, good impact.
I'm very grateful to the Green Bothy.
Yeah.
Dear Green Bothy for sorting it all out for us.
But it was great to see you like interacting with people and like sharing it with, there was kids as well, and people from all different ages and disciplines. So I think it was a success, big success. So hopefully we'll maybe see more, or see like a different iteration in the future.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Cool.
Yeah. Do you? So we can, if you want to find out more about Beth's work, where can we find it?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, where I am down as Beth Horseman, my full name. I'm also on Twitter. I think the handle for that is Beth Visual, and those are about all the places I'm posting just now. But my sound walk is available on the Soundthought website, along with Kevin's and other beautiful committee members. So if you wanted to check that out, just search Soundthought.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Beth, and thanks to the Dear Green Bothy and Soundthought.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.